it was violent. These pictures are from the Henan province. Some estimates say more than 1,000 people were there. They were protesting against the local government. So they were beaten up and dragged away. We hope they're safe. It's rare to see so many people protesting in China. Perhaps these people had no choice. Their life savings are at risk. This crisis began in the month of April. It started with 4 small banks. They began running out of cash. There were bank runs. So these banks stopped all withdrawals. All bank accounts were frozen. Even if you had the money in the bank, you could not take it out. And since then, the depositors have been running from pillar to post. They have one ask. They want their own money back.
Yeah, apparently that's a crime, huh?
We told you about this last month. Since then, the story has become bigger. So much so that this could be one of China's biggest bank scams. How much money are we talking about? Tens of billions of yuan, according to one claim. This is what the depositors have said. And as always, China is silent about the specifics, so we don't really know how deep the rot is. But we do have some idea as to who is behind it.
Why don't they just give them their money?
A private investment firm. The name of this company is Henan Shinkaifu Group. The firm has stakes in all these 4 banks, and it could have lost the money of its depositors. This firm colluded with bank employees. It took deposits from customers online. High interest rates were offered to attract them. Once the deposits were made, the money was given to other borrowers. And that's standard practice for any bank. They take deposits from you, then using that money, they give out loans to other people. But in this case, the money was
Ponzi
loaned
scheme.
to risky borrowers.
That's what it is.
Reports say these debts failed. So the banks may have lost the money they took from depositors. And that's one version of what happened.
Sounds like
The
it's
depositors
planned.
don't agree with it though. They say a more sinister plot is at play. They say Chinese government officials are involved in this, and they point to the People's Bank of China. That's China's central bank. So they say that the Chinese central bank is involved in this scam. Their local officials in Henan are being accused of corruption. These allegations were made during yesterday's protest. Do you know where these protesters have gathered? This building you see, it belongs to China's central bank. This is their local branch in Zhengzhou. Zhengzhou is a city in Henan. The protesters were carrying some banners. One of them was in English. It said, "No deposits, no human rights." There was another banner. It said, "Against the corruption and violence of the Henan government." The protesters said, Chinese officials are working with quote-unquote the mafia to suppress protests. They could be referring to these men, seen with the local police in plain clothes, and they played an active role in the crackdown. This is one of the largest protests that China has seen since the pandemic. It wasn't the first one though. These depositors have protested twice before. Each time they faced a state crackdown. So the protesters tried a different strategy this time. Reports say most of them arrived at the protest site as early as 4 a.m. Why did they turn up so early? To avoid being intercepted by local authorities. And they had some success too. But then they faced a crackdown. Some ended up with injuries. Many were taken to makeshift detention sites. Now, Chinese officials clearly want to make an example out of these people. But what happens to their deposits? On that, they have no answers. Chinese regulators still don't have a plan to deal with this mess. In fact, I have their statement with me. Let me tell you what they're saying. Authorities are coming up with a plan to deal with the issue, which will be announced in the near future. That's all they have. It's as vague as it gets.
Yeah.
The focus right now is to end the protest, but the people who face the prospect of losing all their savings say they will not back down. We haven't heard the end of this.
Yep.
And crackdowns, we know, are China's favorite strategy. Their trump card against any problem. Does Vladimir Putin have something similar in Ukraine? A trump card to win the war? Well, he does, but it's not a crackdown. It's a commodity. It's called natural gas. Russia supplies 40% of Europe's gas. You know that by now. If Putin turns off that tap, Europe goes dark. And today he's done exactly that. Russia has closed one of the biggest gas pipelines to Europe, Nord Stream 1.
Wow.
First, some quick facts. This project was mooted way back in 1997. It was inaugurated 14 years later in 2011, the same year it began transporting gas from Russia to Europe. Now take a look at the route. It begins in northwest Russia, passes through the Baltic Sea, and empties into Germany. Total distance is almost 1,222 kilometers. It is the longest subsea pipeline in the world. How much gas does it transport? Almost 55 billion cubic meters every year. 55 billion cubic meters. Simply put, this pipeline keeps Europe running, especially Germany. So this shutdown has spooked the German government. They fear the lights could go off. Now, technically, this is routine stuff. Every year, Russia closes the pipeline for maintenance work. According to the Kremlin, this year is no different. They say the pipeline will open again by July 21st. But Germany is not convinced. They fear this maintenance work is just an excuse that Russia will not reopen the pipeline this time. And if so, how will Berlin be affected? For starters, their energy bills will go up, higher bills, power cuts and rationing, and in the long run, even a recession.
Next week already, we will inform our clients about the current situation and tell them that significant price increases are to be expected. In isolated cases, we will not be able to rule out supply cuts as part of our existing contracts. The current situation leaves us with no other option.
Lässt uns keine andere Wahl.